Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Jay Singh, and I'm the founder of Publication Academy, your online training partner for higher ed career advancement and professional development. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today for this installment of our Career Pathway series, Exiting Academia. Today, we have a fascinating interview with Dr. Gabriel Kaufman, who successfully transitioned from completing a PhD in immunology into the exciting industry vertical of pharmacometrics. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Over now to our amazing Publication Academy interviewer, Dr. Gertrude Nantra.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Dr. G. Nantra here, and today I'm excited to talk with Dr. Gabriel Kaufman. Welcome, Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued to chat with you today. Let's start with your educational background.
Sure. So I have a pretty conventional biology background. I went through in McGill in Montreal, Canada. My bachelor's is in cell biology. Then for anybody that knows Montreal, it's actually built around a large mountain in the center of the island. So I crossed the mountain to the other side, went to the French university, Université de Montréal, the University of Montreal for my master's, which was in orthopedics. And I came back to McGill, which is in the downtown core, for my doctorate, which was in immunology.
Yeah. So PhD in immunology. And then what do you do now?
So I currently work in drug development. My business card says pharmacokineticist. What that means is I analyze blood test data from mostly clinical trials. So when you run a clinical trial, you give the medicine and then you monitor the subjects, whether they're volunteers or patients, sometimes both. And one of the things you do as part of the monitoring is you take blood samples serially, maybe one before the dose, 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, so on and so forth after the dose. And my job is to analyze mathematically the quantities of drug that are recovered in the bloodstream. And that gives healthcare professionals the information that they need both to evaluate the safety and efficacy of the medicine and to use it effectively. Things like how long does the drug persist in the body? Does it build up? What's the half-life? If you anybody that's taken an elementary physics or math course will have heard that term.
Yeah.
So we calculate all of that, and that goes, mostly the stuff that I do goes into applications to regulatory authorities, whether it's Health Canada, the US FDA, the European Medicine Agency. And yeah, that's what I do.
Right. So your work seems to, be in a lab setting then?
Actually, I don't. I work in the office that you see behind me now, a couple of pictures on the wall. I got started actually in the wet lab side of things. So interestingly, right at the end of my doctorate, we can talk more about that transition, but I'll just tell you about the job itself. I worked for a company called Charles River. Anybody in biology has probably heard of them. They're the ones that sell. It's a great company. The main phone number is 1-800-LAB-RATS. That's
yeah, because everybody knows them for that, right? Everybody knows them for lab rats. Yeah.
Indeed, they are the world's biggest purveyor of fine laboratory animals. These are bred in for people that don't necessarily know, these are animals bred, under very controlled, sometimes sterile or aseptic conditions, genetic lineages that you have to use for a lot of research today. Still requires living organisms, and especially for drug safety and drug development. Before you give a new medicine to human, you by law in most of the world have to give it to animals to make sure it doesn't kill them, and it's safe and tolerated, so on and so forth. So Charles River sells these animals. Parallel to that, they run a lot of the trials because they've developed a wide expertise with anything relating to drug development. So I was in the unit at Charles River in the West Island of Montreal, that does the wet lab analysis of blood samples. So they of course are specialized in preclinical or animal work, but they have an active clinical practice as well. So I was a project manager for these whether it was develop a method to detect novel medicine X in human plasma, or okay, we have 50,000 samples. I think I can say it was in a metabolic disease, very general. I can't give you super detailed, but for a treatment of a very common metabolic disease, we had 50,000 samples coming in from clinical trials across North America and Europe that we had to analyze in a given time frame. So I was in the lab every day working with technicians, designing methods, getting results. I was there for around 2 years, and then I transitioned actually away from the lab to the analytical side.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. So let's talk about you going from the end of your PhD to a job in industry. This is something that is always, it always feels like climbing Mount Everest, if you might think of it that way. And thankfully now there are more resources that point academics towards careers within industry and the different paths you could take. But for you, what was that transition like? How did you land that first job?
So Gertrude, I'll just preface my remarks about the transition itself with a bit of my reflections about that whole challenge and mentality surrounding it.
Yeah.
And I've come to believe, and I'm sure, in your work, you've seen some variations on this theme. Academic PhDs, definitely in North America, are set up to do one thing, and that is to train academic scholars, future professors, researchers, in the traditional academic structure. And they do a pretty good job. The thing is, even though they might do a pretty good job, only around maybe 10 to 25% of PhD matriculants, people that graduate with that degree, end up in a tenure track position at a research-intensive university. And then there's a competition for funding. I mean, in Canada, we have the various governmental bodies. In the US, you have the NIH or the National Science Foundation. It's hyper-competitive. So you've landed that awesome, very low chances. It's easier to become a professional sports player in some of the professional leagues than it is to retain a tenure track position at a research-intensive university. And you have the system that, is designed to teach people to do one thing.
Yeah.
And there's this whole world out there of industry that really, really needs, like the job I do, the PhD, or in my case, a PharmD, is the price of entry. To do this job, you need, you have a few pharmacists with a master's, whatever, but your average person that does the job has a doctorate because that's what it takes: the knowledge, the vision, the writing skills, the broad thinking, all of these highly sought after transferable skills that you get with a PhD. In many cases, they're highly desired. In other cases, they're required for these jobs that are out there. The thing is, when you're doing the PhD, you haven't been told that these jobs exist. You haven't been told how to leverage your skills. So I had a few rough bumps along the road, so to speak. The first rough bump was realizing that I'm much more than a technician. Right. So I did my PhD in a traditional wet lab environment. I did work with animals as well. And when you do that for, in my case, it was 5.5 years, which is, I say, fairly average in North America. In Europe, they are a little shorter. At least for me, I developed a self-image as I'm really good technically, and I love working with my hands. They still don't shake. But I know how to do all these techniques, and some of them were very cool, and we use fancy pieces of equipment. But then you look at the jobs that require that technical expertise. Well, you're looking at people with an associate degree, maybe a bachelor's, some hands-on experience, and then you see the stuff that you need a PhD for, or master's or PhD for. And while the technical expertise is important as a base in some roles, it's the knowledge, it's the thinking. And that was hard for me to kind of realize that I had acquired these skills because I was so focused on the technical aspect. And I had to change myself appreciation. I had to change how I was presenting myself. I had to change the way I wrote my CV. It was a complete paradigm shift about how I thought about myself professionally.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was hard was the culture shock. I mean, again, I've mentioned I worked at Charles River. It's a wonderful organization. I retained friendships with people that I met there. So the following remark, has a certain amount of bias to it. I think it's good when you've been in a place and you retain fond memories and you think you learned at that place. But there was definitely a culture shock. Academia tends to be in many contexts very loose, very laissez-faire, as the French would say. I do speak French, but
yes,
you can kind of make your own schedule in many places. You can kind of figure out your own path, do things your own way, do experiments your own way, plan your own, in concert, with your research director. Coming into an industry that was, it's a regulated industry at that. Charles River, like I said, they sell all these animals for research and development purposes, but when they do the contracted research that other companies, sponsors will come to try, you guys, you breed the best lab rats. You will know if I need to. The FDA says I have to test my new medicine on rats. You guys are the best ones, which they are. They're the world leader in this space. But there are regulations, there are procedures, there are norms of behavior. You can't just speak the way you might want to. You have to. There's a dress code, right? Collared shirts for the gentlemen. So all of that's a lot to assimilate.
Yeah.
The ladies couldn't wear torn jeans, which I think for some was a little bit of a challenge. They had to get proper slacks.
Yeah.
So a lot of culture shock that took me some time to overcome. I had good mentors, which helped. But it was definitely a I wouldn't say rude awakening, but at times gentle, at times forceful reminder that you're in a very professional culture and you have to behave very professionally. And the expectations are high and they're sometimes different than in the academic world.
The academic world. So many, you touch on so many good points, and especially the culture shock. The expectations are different. The way we work in academia. Yeah, I agree with you. In academia, things seemed a little slower. In industry, you're doing things for business reasons, and so they have to move fast, or else they get cut. So those are such great distinctions you bring up. When you are applying for your first job at Charles River, what did you do? Did you look for the position online? Did you find this through alumni networks? Like, what were some of the practical steps you took to get there?
So you bring up, Richard, another big challenge is that academicians, or at least the ones in North America that I know, tend to be very good at networking within academia.
Yeah.
You ask somebody, I remember my PhD supervisor, who I also retain good memory. That's another thing that I believe is key.
Yeah.
Make friends, never lose friends. So I love making friends. I love meeting people. I love making new connections, and I'm very careful to never lose them, to never burn bridges, to always try and maintain good relations. That has served me quite well over the years. And part of it is how you show up, how you present yourself, how you manage your interactions with other people. I like to believe that, when you interact in good faith and mutual benefit, that you're really looking, how can I help them? How can they help me? How can we make this better than the sum greater than two individuals? So things tend to work out. But when you talk to an academic, they know, we can go to this postdoc, that postdoc. Do you know anybody? Well, there was this guy who finished a few years ago. You can look him up on LinkedIn, maybe. Yeah, they have no connection. So, but one of the things I did, so leveraging my, great network was of lesser use. But one of the things that I did was I leveraged some people who had been actually in the industry world before coming back to academia, the veterinary staff. If you know a thing or two about animal research, vets go back and forth, because they're highly super specialized, highly skilled individuals.
Yeah.
So I became very close with the veterinary staff because I was doing a lot of animal work, and one of the vets had a connection at Charles River. I said, "Look, send me your CV. I'll pass it on." A guy named, well, I think I can say because he's on the website, Marc Provencher. Turns out Marc was the director of IT for the biggest site of the company. He's since been promoted to global IT director. So, when you have an inside referral, and he passed my CV to the HR group when it eventually landed. I also applied online for a different position, but with the online application and the network introduction, they matched me up and they assigned me to a third position that I didn't even know about. Hey, look, we saw you sent in your CV for this position. That's actually closed, but there's another one that you might be appropriate for. So why don't you come in and have a chat? I spent the afternoon there, met a bunch of great people. I think the interview went well because I got an offer. So a few things I learned from that. First of all, networking helps. And today it's so easy, with LinkedIn and all these mixed conferences. If you're going to these conferences, try to go to the conferences that have a healthy mix of academia and industry and talk to everyone. There's a lot of, if you're looking to break into industry, talk to the people, either academics who work with industry, people in industry. I did not do a postdoc, but some people, have recommended doing industry postdoc. I know in biology, my particular field, that is a very big recommendation. You get a taste of the industry, you see if it's for you, and you also get to network on that side.
Yeah.
But now with LinkedIn, all these various professional conferences, specialties, so Twitter. I mean, people connect in so many different ways now. Back before the advent of social media, it was, I understand, I'm of the social media generation, but I've been told it was a lot harder.
Yeah.
So you can use this, don't just reach out, hey, I'd love to connect.
Yeah.
What is your connection? Like, I went to one of the world's biggest research universities. The joke about McGill, and McGill views itself as not Canada's Harvard, that rather Harvard is Canada's McGill.
I love it.
Right, but when you have a place of 30,000 people, you can make connections, and a lot of those alumni go on to various places. So hey, you went to McGill, and I did my PhD there. Or I'm Canadian, as you may guess. You say, look, somebody for who plays hockey. I've been skating since I was 2, right? So make a connection on that. Or if there's no connection, you can engineer a connection. Hey, I noticed that you're working on this really interesting disease that I followed, or I have a family member I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
One lady who I met, she works in the drug industry in Montreal, said she, many years ago, marched into one of the biotechs who was working on pain research. And she said, my mom suffers from chronic pain. I want to help her.
Yeah.
Who can I talk to? I don't think she got a job from that, but she made connections, which eventually led to a job. It's having this open, positive attitude. And, for every person that will ignore your messages or ghost you, there are 10 who will be very generous and will not necessarily offer you a job. It's has been considered gauche to, message people out of the blue and say, hey, can you employ me? But, hey, can you tell me about what you do? Can you tell me about your industry? Don't give me any trade secrets. I want to learn about it.
Yeah. No.
One very senior recruiter told me that approach will typically land people employment within 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Which is a good statistic.
Good statistic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I especially love that. This is something that I've never even thought of the angle you just brought up, which is for those of us in the biological, biomedical sciences, because we have to work with animal models sometimes, you do have access to these veterinary people. And it never occurred to me to like even chat with those. But you, in your narrative, were talking about how you built relationships with those people, and those people sort of became your advocates, so to speak.
One of the many.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gucci, I'll boast a little bit. My thesis defense was in December 2016. The head vet of the research institute graced us with her presence. 3 days after, I was invited, okay, by the vet care team to give a presentation about some of the specialty techniques that I'd used during my doctorate.
Yeah.
I don't know how many PhD matriculants have had that
I wanted to do that. I very
honor.
few. I would bet to guess, but that is so good because it just highlights the fact that you never know where your opportunities are going to come from. So I really loved how you said be open, be positive, don't rule anybody out because literally anybody could be your ally, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that really worked for me was keeping an open mind. As I mentioned, did my PhD in immunology.
Yeah.
Just watching the clock, it's
Yeah, we're
nearing
almost
11:30,
we're
so
almost there.
you just want to be mindful of your time.
Yeah.
Um, Being open to different possibilities. I think that the experience of going through a PhD tends to breed hyper specialization. After all, when you do a doctorate, you are the world's #1 expert in your thesis topic, more than your research director, more than the people who've written 20 papers on it.
Yeah.
You are, so we tend to think super, super specialized. But when you're not going to be researching that one question of interest and everything around it for the next 40 years as an academic researcher, you might have to think about what else could I be passionate about? What else could I be interested in? Like when I got into, it's called bioanalysis, this blood testing at the end of my doctorate, from a core immunology background. Well, it turned out, I had to learn a lot of biochemistry that I didn't really know, and a lot of pure chemistry that I knew even less about. And then I had to learn pharmacokinetics, which is mathematical modeling. So I'd done some big data, but like I knew nothing about the mathematical modeling of medicine,
Yeah.
if you are medicines.
Yeah.
So I'd like to believe I was open to it.
Yeah.
Well, it got me, where I am today, which is, actually in a very similar field, but
Yeah.
I don't do much immunology on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So being open to that shift, and I'm still employed in the biological sciences, okay, which is very lucky, I believe. Some people, when they do a doctorate, the most egregious example, I know a guy, he did his doctorate in organic chemistry. He is now a cycling journalist.
Oh wow. That's amazing. But then it also highlights the fact that as PhDs, the training we've received up until this point does make us adaptable. It does make us people that say, okay, I don't know this thing, but I'm willing to learn. I've never done this. I've never even written about cycling, but I'm going to learn everything I know about cycling and become a cycling journalist. So I think that's a skill I want to. It comes. That's what bubbles up when we're talking about transferable skills. Is our ability to learn and execute, because when we went into our PhD programs too, we didn't know anything about our research questions, but by the end of it we had a whole book of results that said, okay, here's the answer to, I attempted to answer the question and here's some answers.
Yeah. I think also it's the mentality of realizing, not only being adaptable, but realizing that you have been adapting for the course of your doctorate, and you are adaptable, and those skills are highly valued in the marketplace.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's, I think, a question of putting it all together. And yes, the job market, especially in the life science, is very competitive. Definitely North America, there are too many people still coming through the PhD programs. It's a Ponzi scheme, in my view.
Yeah.
But if you've committed for whatever reason to entering a doctoral program and you feel that you can make it through, those skills are highly valued. Those
Yeah.
skills are in demand,
Yeah.
and those skills will take you far
Yeah.
if you present and adapt and believe really in yourself that you're going to go far.
Yes.
But it's a lot of work to come to that point. You think doing a PhD is hard. It's a whole reinvention.
It really is. It really is. I know exactly what you're. It's really a mental rearrangement of things because that's not how we were trained. We're slowly coming to the end of our conversation, and the time went by. I told you it was going to fly by.
Indeed.
But what last words of advice would you give to somebody that is finishing their doctorate and they know that they don't want to work in academia and they want to work outside? What advice would you give them in 2024 going into 2025?
Okay, the first is finish that degree. I think ABD is a thing, right? All but dissertation. Having the actual degree, and yes, it might be another 6 months or a year, and funding is always a challenge, but you've gotten this far. It is so much better for your professional profile and for your own personal self-image to finish that degree, get the thesis in, do the corrections. I would recommend doing the thesis. I made this mistake. I started working before submitting, which was a huge error. If circumstances permit, whether it's funding, logistics, etc., to write full time and submit full time. The corrections and the defense can usually be managed while working at least part time. But get it done, because people say, "Oh, I did PhD courses." What does that mean? I hold a doctorate. That's a whole different level. That's the first thing. Persevere and obtain the credential that you've worked so hard to rightfully deserve.
Yeah.
The second is be conscious of how you view yourself and how you present to the outside world. Everything today, what's my personal brand? It sounds facile, but it's actually a very profound question.
Yeah.
So as you view yourself and evaluate, perhaps ask trusted friends, advisors, well, how do I come across? And how am I perceived?
Yeah.
And use that constructive feedback to build the type of person that you want to present professionally. The third is identify not just one, but perhaps several areas where you could be passionate or at least happy with. If you're the type of person that hates writing and you bashed your head to get your thesis in, maybe becoming a science writer is not up your alley. But if you're the type that maybe you like running around all day and juggling 20 different balls. Well, there are scientific project managers who always meet because it's hard. But if you like that thing, talking to 100 people and managing diverse inputs and making sure everybody keeps their schedule, you don't have to write a word.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then, so that's identifying possibilities and identifying multiple potential possibilities, because there are so many in industry, and use all of the tools out there. There's a wealth of information on the net, on LinkedIn, the various social media channels. Connect with people. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, full disclosure.
Yeah.
And my real name is there.
Yes.
So you can use all of this to your advantage and really position yourself to succeed in the industry world.
Absolutely. Wise words from Dr. Kaufman. You use all your tools to succeed. Thank you so much, Gabriel. This was such a great.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting, and best of luck.
Yeah.